I'm Chris Walters. I'm the team leader for community inclusion at the City of Greater Geelong, and also co-hosting this with me is Kirby Vanderlee. She is a senior community development project officer, also responsible for helping us oversee this grants program. So you've joined us for the 2021 community grants on the Healthy and Connected Community Grants session. So presently we have quite a lot of grants open. So this particular one is just for the Healthy and Connected Communities grants. Okay. Excuse me while I get having issues with my computer a bit. Okay, firstly, before we start, I want to make acknowledge the country. Council acknowledges the Wadawurrung traditional owners of this land and all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. Before we start, this presentation is being recorded, so it can be uploaded to the City of Greater Geelong website for other community people to view later on. The presentation will go for about 20 minutes and followed by some 10 minutes for questions from yourselves. Please mute your microphone for the first part of the presentation. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature at the base of your screen. This is being monitored, so we can answer your question during the session or at the end. Thank you for your cooperation on that. Okay. So what we're going to cover off today, what are the Healthy Connected Community Grants, the guidelines around them, key dates that you'll need to know, who can apply, how much you can apply for, what you can apply for, do you need any permits or approvals, we'll cover off that, how we assess the applications, some contact information, and then again, as I said, there'll be time for questions or feedback at the end. So the Healthy and Connected Community Grants are the funds are used for delivery for projects and programs within our communities to get our community groups and organisations to run projects they believe will make the best impact on our communities. The grants aim to improve the health, the wellbeing and the capacity of all of our community. And we encourage people to put up projects that address areas of need in line with our municipal health, public health and wellbeing plan, which is on the site, on the website, that is. In terms of grant guidelines, there are two relevant guidelines that exist that each applicant must comply with. There are some standard guidelines. So if you go onto the City of Greater Geelong website under grants, you'll see that there are guidelines that are common to all grant programs, regardless if it's Healthy Connected or our COVID Quick Response grants or our arts events programs. And then they're specific to the grants, like we have the Healthy and Connected Community Grants Guidelines, specific just for this particular one, which we will cover off today. So there is a website link if you haven't already been on there, which you probably have, to even just register for today. So you'll probably know about that site. So anyway, it's www.geelongaustralia.com.au/grants. So key dates that are important for you to know. Well, we opened last Friday, and that was for a whole raft of grants, as I was just mentioned before, including the Healthy and Connected grants. The applications for this particular category close on Monday, the 14th of September at 5 p.m. Please try and get your applications in before then. We always do have a rush on the last day, and then there's always crashes with the internet and whatever. And those that don't actually get their applications in, they won't be considered. From that 14th of September, there's quite a lot of internal processes that go on within council, particularly for these grants. So it goes through an internal process and external auditors as well, and it goes up to council before they're announced, which we hope they will be announced, if not in November, definitely December this year. As I just noted, please note incomplete or late applications will not be accepted. So who can apply for a grant? We have quite a few conditions on who is able to apply, and again, they're found under the grant guidelines. Please note, if you're receiving external support to write this grant, you may actively participate in developing the ideas and in the application process. Applicants who have received funding from this grant program in previous financial year will be given a lower priority. We have got only a certain amount for the connected, Healthy and Connected grants. We have $243,000 that we can give out to applicants. And I'll go through how much each applicant can apply for. But if we get more than 243,000, we really do have to prioritise who gets it. And so those who've had a previous grant get a lower priority first in this round. Who can apply? Well, you need to be in one of these first three particular groups. You either got to be a not-for-profit incorporated body, cooperative or association, or you've got to be a registered charity organisation and under the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. You can be part of the government schools or learning institution, but only when we say about this, it has to be, you can put in a grant application and you're from a school or a learning institution, it's got to be not anything related to education curriculum, because that's considered to be the responsibility of the Department of Education. Or if you're a group that it's not incorporated, you're only small and you haven't got around to being incorporated, you'll need to get an auspice. So you'll need to either get an auspice from a not-for-profit body or a registered charity organisation. You can't be a sole trader or an individual. You can't be a business. You can't be somebody that owes money to council either. We do checks on those. And organisations that have applied for grants previously and have not given us their evaluation and acquittal for any other previous form from council, you'll be exempt from being able to apply. Organisations that have already received funds from council from this program within the current financial year also won't be eligible to apply. But given it's already, that one should actually come off because this is a new one, so that's just an oversight. How much can you apply for? Well, we've got two categories under the Healthy and Connected Community Grants. The first one is our Community Project Grant. Last year, this was at $6,000, and we've actually upped it to $10,000. And this is for delivery of community programs and projects that are responsive to building health, wellbeing, and capacity that benefits people in our broader community. We also have the equipment grant, which has been the same as we have in previous years. This is just to assist with the cost of small equipment purchases that help community groups to either deliver services and programs, improve health and safety outcomes, or improve resources that support volunteer groups. So it's an either or. You can't apply for both the community grant project or the equipment grant. We do highly encourage people to contribute if they can towards the cost of the project. That does show that you really are committed to the project that you're going to put the application in for. So what sort of initiatives are we looking for when we're looking to fund? It's those that promote healthy lifestyles, that increase community participation in physical activities, recreational pursuits, healthy eating, initiatives that improve people's mental health and wellbeing outcomes in the community. Pretty relevant at the moment, given that we're going through the COVID pandemic. Community celebrations or events that mark a specific milestone, significant anniversary, or promote community inclusion and social connections. And if you're looking at running a community celebration, please make sure that you are abiding by COVID safe plans and the restrictions that may be in place when you seek to actually host that celebration. Activities that strengthen community relationships and encourage active participation in community life. initiatives that complement or support existing programs or strategies to raise awareness or address complex social issues that could include things around discrimination, gender equality, family violence, or community safety. Initiatives that address specific needs of either Aboriginal, multicultural, newly arrived communities, LGBTIQ people, children, young people, seniors, and people with disabilities. Projects that aim to increase community knowledge and capacity to use and embrace digital technologies and contribute to lifelong learning. Initiatives that provide capacity building, community group governance, strengthening and training opportunities for volunteers. Establishment costs with setting up a new group, but it's not about costs that are ongoing running. So be careful not to actually do that, but if you're establishing yourself, that's okay. Developing of strategic or business plans to facilitate and assist community groups to identify and achieve goals and objectives consistent with their charter. So that was for the community projects grants. There are specific ones under the equipment grants that the small equipment purchases that help community groups to either deliver services or program and improve health and safety or improve the resources, as already mentioned. And equipment requiring building permits or permission for installation, we do not do that. That is, we won't fund those sort of initiatives because they're usually quite a bigger project at hand. And what we won't consider either is staff wages or salaries within any of the grants, administration costs, as I mentioned just before, and insurances, existing events that are currently being funded and are ongoing, requests for retrospective purposes. So you just don't go, okay, I'm going to buy a piece of equipment and I'll get it funded back from council. We don't go back and retrospectively fund those projects or those pieces of equipment. Projects that duplicate or do not link with strategies or other service responses unless there's an evidence of need. We don't fund projects for fundraising events. Council also don't fund projects to cover costs of council services, e.g. waste removal. So you may have things like bins at events and stuff like that, and there might be a charge for that. We don't cover the cost of those. And any activity that's aimed at promoting any particular political view. Applications that provide evidence of the intent to increase the social and economic position of the most vulnerable people or enhance their sense of community will be assessed more favourably because our unit is around community inclusion and we work with our Healthy Connected Communities teams, and this is where our funds are coming from. So those particular projects will get a higher rating. If you're stuck for ideas, there are a range of ideas that are again on the Geelong Australia website to have a look at all things that we have funded in the past. And if you're unsure about if your project or your equipment ideas are suitable, please, you can contact a grants team member, which we have details at the end of this presentation for, and they can actually guide you through whether or not your idea will be fine to submit. In terms of permits and approvals, if you're going to organise a community event, please refer to our city events planning guide for further information, because you may need an event permit depending where you're going to hold it, how large it's going to be. That actual planning event guide has a lot of good detailed information, and you can use part of that to actually put into your application to show that you've really thought about your event. So how are our applications assessed? Eligible applications are assessed on a weighted average scoring system. So there are 3 categories we use. So after you submit, our grants team will make sure that you don't have any outstanding debts with council and you do meet the eligibility criteria being either a not-for-profit or a charity organisation. And then we rate them against three. Those grants are actually sent to an internal assessment team where they're assessed against three particular categories. One is about being well planned. What sort of community impact does that project or piece of equipment will have, and the environmental impact. So there are different weightings for the two subcategories. For the community grant, we've put 30% as a weighting, and 65% as a community impact. Now, the well plan is higher for the community project grant than it is for the equipment, because we need to make sure that you can actually implement that project quite well. And basically we've given you a lower weighting on the environmental impact, because it's usually people orientated. For the equipment grant, where we've got a well planned at 15%, in terms of community impact, the highest is of course at 70%, because we really want to make sure that whatever piece of equipment you get is going to make the most beneficial impact to the community. And also 15% is allocated to the environmental impact as well, because that piece of equipment could, council have got a policy to be as sustainable as possible. Applicants should address these criteria in their online application to build a strong application. So if I was you and you're going for a community a community project, I would actually focus a lot of my attention on the community impact, with a bit more around being well planned. And if you're you're seeking to put in for a grant for a piece of equipment, go for how much impact it's going to mean for your community or your group. So if you need help with any of this, as I said before, the grants team are there to help. And so please take note of their numbers: 5272 5039 or 5272 4736. Or alternatively, you can email communitygrants@geelongcity.vic.gov.au. As I said earlier, we have lots of the grants open at the moment. So this particular stream may not be what you need, but could be. And basically, if you really get stuck on your ideas, Kirby and I can be of assistance. So there's our actual details on the screen as well. So I'm going to, noticing that time is getting in the way, I'm going to hand it over to you to ask if you've got any questions or any feedback for us. So if you have, you can either unmute or put us a question into the chat feature, which Kirby will let me know if there's any questions coming through.
Hi Chris, it's Kirby. That was really great. Look, I do have one question at the moment from Vicky. So it just says, we have a strong IT and video production skills if needed. Can we apply for in-person workshops, and taking into consideration the COVID restrictions, and have a backup plan for online workshops and video broadcasting for the region if we're still in lockdown?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we would be looking for, people that have been innovative in these times. So that would be a project we would consider highly and rate highly.
Great, Chris. We've got a few more questions coming through. So from Alison, do you have any guidelines for auspicing?
Basically, we'll refer you to the grants team to actually work out how that is done. As Kirby and I are both within the actual community inclusion unit, we actually look at the projects themselves, but the actual auspicing and organisational arrangements that goes through our grants team, they will be able to advise you on how to do that.
And we've got one more question. So if your application is successful, is there a time frame which the grant must be acquitted?
It must be acquitted within 12 months of receiving the actual grant. So if you're successful, you'll get you'll be contacted by our grants team, and they'll discuss the details of that. And usually once there's an agreement made and payment is made, you have 12 months to get to expend the funding and come back with your acquittal and evaluation of the project back to us.
Beautiful. I think that answers that question. And we've got one more that's come through. So for a planned project, you could work alongside a school, but not in terms of the curriculum. Is that correct?
That is correct. Ours is about having community benefit. So we have funded projects within schools that actually were doing projects involving people outside the school environment as well, if that makes sense. So I know things like, in terms of an example is defibrillators. Sometimes we get schools to ask us to fund out of the equipment part defibrillators. Now, we don't normally fund schools for those because it's only the school has access to them. But if the defibrillator was in a gymnasium that was constantly hired out to community or used by community groups, whether it be a local karate group, Tai Chi group, that sort of thing, that would be okay. But it has to be something that benefits the community as a whole, not just separate to the school.
Thanks, Chris. So just got a question inquiring where the funds can be spent. So can they be spent in the Bellerin and Surf Coast area or just within the Geelong region?
They are City of Greater Geelong region only. So it is our own council that we're funding the money out of at a ratepayer, so it needs to be within Geelong.
That's great. That's all the questions we've got in the discussion board. If anyone does have a question that I'd like to say, you could just unmute your microphone at this point and we're happy to answer.
Well, if there's no other questions, thank you for joining us, and please contact us if you've got any more questions you want to ask, or Kirby and I will be we'll stay in the meeting for the next few minutes if you want to ask us privately. So thank you, and we'll hope to see some really good quality applications come through. Thank you.